Well, that was an interesting episode. It had some recurring elements along with some recurring problems, but overall, it was a more all around solid episode than last week. It tied in together, the plot lines tied in together a lot better this time around. Probably because they weren't dividing their time in between in between two completely unrelated plots. But this episode saw the return of Helena Bertinelli, who comic book fans and fans of the show will know is secretly the Huntress. Now, I don't know. I mean, when I well, first of all, when I saw the title of this episode, I was like, okay, they're bringing the Huntress back because Birds of Prey, although they don't have the Oracle here, Barbara Gordon, they do already have Black Canary, and they have already previously introduced the Huntress. So judging by the title, I was like, okay, yeah, they're going to bring the Huntress back for some reason in this episode. And the reason being that Frank Bertinelli, her father, who was taken into police custody, is coming back to Starling City to face trial. And as such, so is Helena because she wants to kill him. And basically, the basic gist is that Oliver and his team have to stop him. While at the same time, this is kind of a B plot. At the same time, Oliver is still trying to control. I can't talk. Oliver is still trying to control Roy's anger because he still has the Mirakuru in him, and Oliver is afraid that he could snap at any minute. Although all things considered, I think he's doing pretty well. But I digress. So what was good about this episode? Well, the acting. The acting was very good all around. Just like it is in basically every episode. And what I really like about the point that this show is at right now is that unlike when the show first started out, you can tell that these actors clearly like each other. They clearly have very believable chemistry with each other. Because when this show first started out, these characters didn't really. In some cases, it was justified because these characters were really meeting each other. But some of these actors were just kind of acting like friends, as opposed to you could as opposed to actually being able to show that yeah, these actors are friends. But now that the cast has gotten comfortable in their roles, they've gotten to know each other. You can tell that a lot of them have very genuine connections, and even the newer stars like Katie Lotz as Sarah are fitting in pretty nicely. I'm liking her more and more. So yeah, the acting is still very good. The characters, most of them anyway, are still written very well. Although there wasn't really much in the way of advancement for Oliver's character. This time around, it focused more on the advancement in Sarah and Roy's characters, and Laurel. But with that said, Sarah's character arc this episode was pretty believable. Although I would have thought they would have time to address the fact that she's basically been with the League of Assassins for the past 5 years. So when Oliver says to her, "Don't kill," I would have thought that the topic of the League of Assassins would have come up. Just saying, because if their reputation and their name is to be believed, then she's been killing for a while now. So in one sense, I don't really see how this makes much difference. But in another sense, she really did have no choice. She was being told to kill. She was being ordered to kill. It was kill or be killed when she was in the League of Assassins, presumably. Here Oliver is arguably trying to, or not arguably, it can be argued that this time around it's it's more significant that she not kill because Oliver is trying to get her not to. He's trying to get her to break that instinct to kill. But a little more in the way of actually addressing that would have been nice. But overall, it's still well acted. It's still developed enough. And as for the Huntress herself, I don't know. I mean, she started off interesting back when she was introduced in season 1. I liked where they were going with her as this kind of kindred spirit. But to be fair, they were still in the process of getting their feet wet with these characters. I don't really think that they nailed the Huntress in terms of how she was written. Innuendo. But I'm sure that there are many people who agree with me, or not. But the Huntress is one of those people who I think she's supposed to have a lot more charisma than she's given in the show. And the way that they kind of wrote her and the way that Jessica DeGo plays it, it honestly comes off as kind of petulant. It honestly comes off as some little girl not really liking her daddy, so she's going to kill him. I know there's more to it than that, and they have given her proper motivation, but I don't know. They've basically focused on her trying to kill her dad for a long time now. So maybe she will improve as a character once we've actually moved past that. And this episode basically signifies that we can move past that, because that plot line is tied up, and I am moderately interested to see where her character goes from here, if anywhere. Although I don't really think they're done with her character, because this was such a monumental advancement, relatively speaking, in comparison to how much she's been fixated on this one singular goal basically throughout her entire screen time in the show thus far. It'll be interesting to see what she does with herself from here on out. I mean, is she going to go join the League of Assassins? I don't know. But she doesn't really have much left, and her identity is not a secret, so I don't know. But the interactions with her and Sarah were kind of fun. They were amusing, and thankfully they didn't dwell on it. It was all over the commercials for this. It was all over the promos, like this cat fight between Huntress and Black Canary. They don't dwell on it. They do give you 2 fights between these 2 characters, and they do have some banter, but they don't overdo it. It's not overly indulgent. They indulge the fans just enough, and then like I said, they don't go too far with it. So I appreciate that kind of restraint. I mean, I appreciate the fact that they didn't go too cheesy. They didn't go too stereotypical with the whole cat fight aspect, because honestly, this could have turned into a fight over Oliver. So I'm glad they didn't go that route. What else? Laurel was by far the weakest part of this episode, although that wasn't necessarily her fault, because this episode actually starts out pretty promisingly for her character, basically going to one of those meetings, and she even has a little thing on her keychain that says 30 days sobriety. So I was like, okay, they're addressing these issues. She's trying to do better, but almost immediately afterwards, she is conned into going back to work in the DA's office by some guy named Adam. I don't know. He's a background character. And it turns out that this is an elaborate ploy to set a trap for Helena. So on top of being kind of a cheat in that in that it's not real. I mean, she's not really coming back to work. She's being duped. But also, I think they chose to reintroduce her to the workplace a little too early. Because honestly, this would be like if in, let's see, how can I put this? How can I put this? It would be like if in Game of Thrones, when Jaime Lannister was captured at the end of season 1, it would be like if he immediately was released at the end of season 1. Like he was captured near the end of season 1 and then he's released in the season 1 finale. That is what this narrative move signifies to me, is that they're taking the easy way out, because I don't think they feel that Laurel is an interesting enough character to involve if she's not involved with the story. And putting her back in the DA's office is a pretty easy way to involve her in the story, because you can say like, oh, Laurel can prosecute this guy, or Laurel can get information on this guy, or information can be exposited to her through her superiors about this criminal who's running loose. So it's an easy way to involve her in the narrative, and I think that's mainly why they did it. And I'm not talking about realism in a comic book show, even though this show has stayed pretty realistic in terms of what it could be in comparison to how out there and cheesy it could be. I'm not talking about realism, but I am saying, couldn't we allow her just some time to digest what she has been doing wrong all this time? Couldn't we allow her to really come to terms with this? Couldn't we allow her to really taste the consequences? This just seems like a kid getting timeouts for. I know some people might be angry with me for using this phrase to describe Laurel, but this would be like if a kid got timeout for supposedly 5 minutes and then the timeout was shortened so that the kid got out of the corner, so the kid got to come out of the corner at 1 minute instead of 5. So yeah, I think they should have let her face the consequences at least a little more. I think this was way too soon. But to be fair, they do show that she's, or they try to show that she's learned something from her experiences in her interactions with Black Canary and the Huntress. Although those scenes were still contrived, it still felt like she was making excuses, and again, it just felt rushed. With that said, the only other major issue I have with this episode is the Roy Harper storyline. Now, for the most part, Colton Haynes has done a decent job of playing Roy Harper. I mean, he's played it a little too teen angsty for my taste, but I guess that's how the character is written, and that's why they cast one of the guys from Teen Wolf. But Oliver makes him do something completely boneheaded and nonsensical. Oliver's like, okay, if you want to stay in our little club, then A, you have to control your rage, and B, you have to break up with Thea. Why does he do this? Well, Oliver claims that Thea could be potentially put in danger basically anytime Roy snaps. So the safest way for Roy to maintain calm and get forward with his training is to break up with Thea. Now, two problems with this theory. A, this makes no sense from a narrative perspective, because if anything, Thea is now more exposed than ever when it comes to defending her from potential threats, because Roy was basically the ultimate bodyguard. He's basically been induced with this super steroid that makes him beat the crap out of anyone who would come near his girlfriend with with malicious intent. So there's that. From a just strategic standpoint, this doesn't make sense, and also from a character standpoint, this doesn't make sense, because up until this point, Roy's only, or one of his only reasons to stay sane, one of the main reasons that he is able to calm down, is because of Thea. Thea is his driving force for wanting to make the city a safer place. She is his driving force for wanting to control the Mirakuru. Removing that from the equation, I can't really see any upsides to that. So yeah, it felt really contrived, like, I love you, but I can't be with you. But to Roy's credit, he was effective in driving her away. That's all I'll say on that. But if, like the Laurel scenes, it felt contrived, it felt completely nonsensical. It was nonsensical, it made no sense. But aside from that, the acting was good. Even the characters that I wasn't particularly interested in this time around, like Katie Cassidy and Colton Haynes, they were still well acted. I like the what few interactions there were between the older members of Team Arrow and the newer members. So yeah, this was a pretty strong episode. The action scenes were still very good. They're still very well shot. They're exhilarating. They're well choreographed. The island stuff has moved forward a bit. Really, the only complaint I have with this episode, and this kind of ties into the whole arc that they're trying to go for this season, is that there wasn't enough Manu Bennett. There wasn't enough. And I can understand why, because they wanted to tie up the Huntress plotline. But honestly, if you have a seasonal villain, I think you should use him. But to be fair, they do look like they're going to use him a lot more in the next episode. And when he was there, he lended plenty of gravitas. And I really wanted to make a Spartacus joke during one of the bits where he was on screen, because he basically, when he's torturing Oliver on the island, he says, Romans mark their victims with whatever crime that they're accused of. I'm like, okay, insert Crixus joke here. But I did like this episode a little more than the last episode. It wasn't... I can't really say it was quite as fun, because last episode we got to interact with all sorts of new characters, or relatively unseen characters, like Michael J. White and Deadshot. But as far as episodes go, even though this did have some of the recurring problems, it did set itself up to have an exhilarating follow-up. And overall, the pros outweighed the cons. The contrived moments and the nonsensical moments were not really prevalent enough to ruin the really good acting, the well done action scenes, and the overall flow of it. Because, like I said, this episode did flow better than the last one. Just as a whole, they weren't dividing their time like they were with the last one. So, yeah, that's about all I got. And tomorrow night is Vikings.